Meeting of the Scrutiny Committee for Leader, Deputy Leader and Housing and Customer Service, which has been held in the Council Chambers. Our first one for a long time for this committee to actually be live. So it's lovely to see you all on Wednesday, the 21st of September 2022 at 7 p.m. If the Vice Chair would like to read out the safety announcement, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councillors, the building fire alarm signal is a continuous two-tone alarm. On hearing the evacuation alarm, 1. Leave the building by the nearest marked exit route. 2. Follow the green signs for the assembly point, which is the large staff car park opposite the entrance to the building. Anyone who can't use the stairs will be helped by officers present after other people have left. Please do not return to the building until it's told safe to do so by an authorised officer. And to remind everybody that the whole of the council site is a no smoking area and that mobile phones must be switched to silent. Thank you, councillors.
Thank you, Vice Chair. We have some new officers as part of our team tonight. We've got Paul Turner, Community Services Manager, and Maris Kynastan, if I pronounced that correctly, Head of PMO. So welcome. Thank you very much. And this will be our last scrutiny meeting of this committee with Tom. So I'd like to thank you for all the work you've done to help this committee over the years. Thank you very much, Tom. Thank you very much indeed. Item 1, to note substitutes in accordance with Council Procedure Rule 4. I have Councillor Clark substituting for Councillor Stockwell, Councillor DeBell substituting for Councillor Trumbull. Item 2, to receive apologies for absence, I have Councillor Stockwell, Councillor Jackson, Councillor Trumbull, Councillor Coote and Councillor Rachel Cromie. Item 3, to receive declarations of interest from members in respect of any matter on the agenda. I see none, thank you. Item 4, to confirm the minutes of the meetings held on the 11th of May and 18th of May 2022. If you would like to vote, please, on that. Thank you. If they're agreed. Anybody struggling with the buttons?
Yes, because it's not coming up like yours.
Mine is, but...
Yours is, but mine's not.
Okay. Slight technical hitch, bear with us. Well, it might do that. This was a test run for the main event. Did you? Okay, we'll go the old-fashioned way while they sort it out. Are they agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Item 5, to consider any items the Chair agrees to take as urgent business. I have none. Item 6, Mid-Sussex Partnership Annual Report is going to be introduced by Mr. Paul Turner, Community Services Manager. He's going to introduce it and then he's going to cover it in the 4 sections. Community Safety Subgroup, the Health Group, Community Resilience Group, and UK Chaired Prosperity Group. And we'll take questions after each section, if that's okay. So over to you, Paul. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Hello. Good evening, councillors. This is the annual report on the work of the Mid-Sussex Partnership, which is the overarching partnership of statutory and non-statutory organisations working to improve the quality of residents' lives across the district. The report seeks to provide members with information on the work undertaken under the umbrella of the MSP in 2021-2022 and the programme for the year ahead. In item 11, members will find more details on the MSP activity over the last 12 months. And further into the report, members will find details on 3 subgroups of the MSP. Those 3 subgroups are the Community Safety Group, the Health Group, otherwise known as the Local Community Network to our NHS colleagues, the Community Resilience Group. Those details will include membership, projects and activities and priorities for each group in this coming year. Each of these groups are allocated £10,000 a year from the MSP to carry out related activities under community safety, health and community resilience that benefits local residents. Highlights of those activities are recorded in this report from this last year. Members will also note, attached in Appendix A, is the Strategic Intelligence Assessment. This is the partnership's data set, including data from health, community resilience, crime, police data, which helps set priorities for the partnership and its subgroups for the coming year. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions or comments from members.
Anything on Paul's introduction you wish to ask? Okay, I see no indication, so if you want to carry on, Paul.
Sure. So if I take members to community safety groups work first, which is item 14, and some of the highlights of that work you'll see in there. I think first thing to remember is to mention is that a lot of this work is supported by different officer groups within the district council. So for community safety, Mandy Cummingham, who manages the community safety team here, does lead and help chair this group with the police. And so kind of the first few steps we've got there are antisocial behaviour cases dealt with our antisocial behaviour officer in the first page along those lines. And some of the highlights of this report are projects we relate to develop to provide support for parents and teenagers with challenging behaviour, work under the partnership under the Antisocial Awareness Week, which involves the Youth Council Antisocial Behaviour Team, Sussex Police, the 3 town councils, Sussex Clubs for Young People, and the Purple Bus Project, which again goes out to King Shaw's playing field at East Grinstead. This sessions include physical activities, sporting activities, work under the partnership around fraud prevention. Again, this is done in partnership with Sussex Voluntary Action, and they've hosted a fraud awareness forum, and local voluntary community groups in partnership have attended these training sessions. There's an update in item 25 around CCTV cameras in East Court and Mount Nuddy, recreation grounds. And then there's some overall data as you move on along in the partnership around crime data in mid-Sussex. So I'm happy to take any questions sort of on that first subgroup, if we have any from members.
Yeah. Councillor Janice Edward, please.
Thank you. On page 11, under item 20, how were the schools actually selected for this special Your Life You Choose Law Days? I noticed, how were those chosen? Just curious.
Yeah, I'll be honest, and it's a bit of a disclaimer, this is a new area of work to me. So my colleague Mandy Cunningham is chairing this group, but I've taken this over the last few weeks. So, and how they're chosen, it will be decided within the subgroup, and it may be that they're volunteering schools or there's data to back up that they've had particular issues around that. But what I can do is come back to you, Councillor, just to give you a proper answer on the selection criteria for that.
And how many would you hope to address in the coming year? Because I mean, there's several secondary schools.
Yeah, there are proposals to carry this on. I don't think this has been agreed yet in terms of how many schools that we're going to carry this out on, but it will depend on capacity within the partnership and how they deliver that. But again, I can come back on the specific details for you about how many schools. That's no problem.
Thank you. Councillor Whittaker.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Paul, and thank you for the very comprehensive report. On page 11, paragraph 16, it states that Sussex Police have previously invested in additional staff for Mid-Sussex. Recently, at an East Grinstead Town Council Public Services Committee on the 1st of September, Sergeant Paul Voigt, under fairly heavy questioning, said that the neighbourhood policing team within the north of the district, and particularly East Grinstead, was understaffed. And that meeting is on record and on YouTube. And in fact, the situation was worse than that, because at Checkermead, there's a police contact centre that opened in 2017, but for over the last 12 months, there's no contact centre for the public to be face to face. And when questioned on that particular point, he said he would need to make a business case to his district commander at North District, which was alarming. So I just wanted to share that latest information, not strictly within April, May, June Q1 here, but it's relevant in the context, certainly for East Grinstead and Mid Sussex. So if I could ask that you and the leader take that back to the next MSCP meeting and have that raised, please.
You okay with that, Councillor Shepherd? It was. Hey, please, yeah.
Issue that is important to members and communities in East Grinstead. The new district commander lives locally and is very seized of the issues that need attention in Mid Sussex, and it is one of the things that is on his radar to try and resolve. But we'll keep it on our radar as well.
Thank you. Councillor Alison Bennett.
Thank you, Chairman. There are 2 points that I'd like to raise, please. The first is about youth provision in the rural parts of the district. I've got the next in a series of meetings in Hurstpierpoint Parish, which is a multi-agency meeting that happens regularly about the youth offer. And I suspect that we're going to go back and go, there's still not enough funding for Sussex Clubs for Young People. They spend a huge amount of their time in bid applications, the funding source isn't secure. So it's a call really that attention is given to the youth provision in the rural parts of the district as well as in our towns. And the second question I had was about CCTV and in particular mobile CCTV, which I've exchanged some emails with Simon Hughes about. Are you able to provide an update on whether the Safer Streets Fund bid has been successful? I think with a hope to providing mobile CCTV units to try and tackle antisocial behaviour. Thank you.
Thank you for those questions. Yeah, I'll take the first one. Yeah, I agree. Youth provision across the district as a majority kind of a rural area is a big priority for us. And I think something that we've spoken to Sussex Clubs for Young People and involved them with in all the play days that we had recently, so the play days on tour. And if you remember the old format, it was larger play day events that were kind of based in the 3 town areas. And actually over the last couple of years, we've decided to take them on tour to more rural locations. So this year we had, I believe, 9 in rural locations across the district, and we had the Skate Fest as well. So, and Sussex Clubs for Young People were a provider in all of those events. So we're actively involving them in the council's work programme as well. And they are actively involved in the partnerships that we work with around funding and provision of extra projects. So the Purple Bus is an example of some of the work that they've been doing with the Community Safety Partnership as well. So, and they also attend our Better Young's Lives Partnership, which is a network meeting that's not listed in this, but again, it's a network forum. So definitely hear that message from them and definitely working with them. And I feel that we have contributed to kind of some of their activity over the last few years and supporting them to deliver that activity. And it is a key organisation as well. Not many organisations can do what they do across the district, so I'm happy to do that. Second point on the mobile CCTV cameras, I'll have to go back to my colleague Mandy, coming in community safety, just to find that out for you to see where we are with that funding bid. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Lee.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd like to ask a question about 23 in Appendix A, but I think it relates to the section we're discussing, if that's all right. So it's about the different crime figures and how they're changing, and the 2 particularly stand out. Overall, the crime is going down, but arson and serious sexual offences clearly are going up a lot. So my question is twofold. Do we know why this is? And secondly, is there anything that we can or should or are able to do to help redress or prevent this? Thank you.
Just on the arson one, I mean, it's a low base to start with, so it can often be a distortion in percentages. So just be careful there. It's an unstated problem. There's a 9 increase in case, but I just think sometimes percentages can really distort the figures. But anyway, Paul, we might answer.
Yes, it's still quite a high number, though.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
I'm afraid I would be speculating if I was to give you an answer on that. The police supplied that crime data, and it's discussed within the community safety group. So in terms of the priorities that they set out for the year, this was a major issue they thought was a partnership issue they would address, they would have clearly listed that in their priorities moving out the year. So what I can do to get you an answer on what actually is causing those rises is I can go back to the police and see if they can give us an explanation on that for you. Yeah.
Okay, I see no more indications on that section. We'll move on to 29, health group. On page 12.
Thank you. So item 29, this is more familiar territory for me because I actually chair the health group and have done for the last couple of years. And so kind of the priorities leading for last year was supporting children and young people suffering with mental health issues, older people with dementia, supporting workplace health message, so positive messages around health for those of working age, promotion of access to healthcare services. So that was largely around kind of promotion of vaccines and disinformation around those, working with our NHS colleagues, and then looking at health inequalities, so those disproportionately affected by the COVID pandemic. One of the kind of good news stories with the health group is that the NHS integrated care system, so the new NHS integrated care system that came into effect from the 1st of July for Sussex, has now officially recognised the health group as a local community network. And so in their terms, it's their, I suppose, engagement arm into local communities within districts and boroughs. So each area in West Sussex has a local community network, and our health network has subsumed that responsibility, which means we get greater input from our NHS colleagues, which has really been quite beneficial on some of the projects that we've been running lately. In there, again, obviously, in terms of my role and the support, we've mentioned some of the wellbeing numbers there. So the wellbeing service delivered in that period of time 1,785 interventions with a positivity rate of those who responded to feedback of 97.5%. And then as we go into some of the work of the groups that have gone on there, we had a very successful diabetes screening event, which was held in East Grinstead back in September in 21. And you can see from that we had 280 people turn up to that screening event. Actually, we had over 300 people turn up on the day in the morning. That event was run by Lions, who bid for some of the money that the partnership holds. And then we did that in partnership with local GP practices, and the national programme for diabetes screening turned up as well. So on the day, people were able to get their diabetes score, and if they had elevated blood sugar levels, they were able to get an immediate referral into the national programme, which is a free programme that gives you 9 months support. And that's probably highlights some of the benefits of doing these things in partnership, is that you've got the messages from practices and GPs there in terms of vaccinations or additional stuff that you can add to those sort of things. And then you've got local providers as well that can run the events and have that local knowledge and encourage people to turn up at the events. So that was one of the successful events that we run last year. We also took part in quite a detailed conversation and piece of work around supporting parents whose children were experiencing mental health problems. And when within the group, that was quite a hot topic of conversation, especially on the acute end or crisis end, where people are really struggling with suicidal young children. And some of the work that we've pulled out from that is that we'd like to deliver an on-ground project with a local community provider to support parents that perhaps have children that are in the system waiting for support, but to give them practical measures in terms of an information health pack, but also local places to engage to talk about some of the issues that they've got. So Brighton Housing Trust are keen to support that. They're part of the mental health referral pathway, and we also have a local provider that was putting a bid together for that. So some of the key things or work that's happened there, you'll note as well, one of the other projects that we had was that we funded some free places for cancer rehabilitation patients for young people. And that came up from our leisure centre provider, taking part in a 12-week exercise programme, those recovering from cancer, and financial hardship as well. So it just gives you a flavour of some of the health activities. And then item 36 gives you, again, more of a flavour of what we're looking at this financial year in terms of the work of the health group. Happy to take questions on that.
Councillor Janice Henwood, please.
Thank you. Yes, I noticed your concern with children and young people's mental health, and I wondered how much you become involved with adults with mental health. And if I can suggest, I mean, in Burgess Hill, there are very few mental health facilities for adults. We do run a drop-in in Burgess Hill, which I don't know if you might be able to promote that as your mental health, because adults suffer mental health as well as young people.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, in terms of our priorities, it'll be mental health in all ages for next year that we'll be looking at. And we are actually, the next topic conversation for the health group is to talk about key health messages for working age people. And indeed, the project I was just relaying to is called Powerful Parents Project. This really is, I suppose, looking at parents that do have those young people that are struggling with mental health issues, and therefore it is helping them with their distress or concern in that situation. But certainly there are a lot of mental health services out there. A lot of them are overprescribed, but there is good signposting from our county colleagues on the services that are available. But at a local level, there are additional services. And in consultation with Brighton Housing Trust, formerly with Sussex Oakleaf, who are part of the Pathfinder Mental Health Referral Pathway, we definitely find out there's more at a local level that can be done, more of a preventative level. And I think that's where we're best adding value as well, because we're not clinicians or experts, and we can't deal with the acute crisis cases, but we are much better at doing the kind of community preventative level support. So adults definitely would be a focus, I think, for this year. I think it was parents with children last year off the back of the pandemic and the increase in self-harm that we saw.
Thank you. Councillor Alison Bennett.
Thank you, Chairman. A little like Councillor Henwood, my question relates to the mental health section of the report and the appendix. Page 35 for me was, the standout section on there when it talks about the children and young people's surveys about their mental health. At the point where it's set, my screen's just switched off, there we go. It talks about 58.2% of 17 to 19-year-olds reporting that they have eating disorders. It's absolutely, this is devastating statistics. So my question is, does the group that you chair feel that you've got the resources in place to deal with this surge in need?
It's, as I say, we come together, we have a £10,000 budget, and it's willing volunteers that can do something on the ground, in terms of it's a task and finish group. So it is a huge national problem. And you'll see from from the strategic intelligence assessment that one of the things that has increased in our area is self-harm admissions to hospital for children and young people as well as things like eating disorders. But this is a national picture as well. And unfortunately, children's mental health services are overrun, and they will only take acute crisis level cases. And even in some cases, there's waiting lists for those sort of things. So I definitely think, and you look at some of the Prosperity Fund work that we're doing, in terms of preventative work, like investing in our parks and open spaces, in our community hubs, bringing people together, that is a significant part that we can bring to the table, I think, in terms of prevention and providing an environment where people can talk and connect. And that's where I think we should really focus as the work. We have system leads in the clinical areas, which they need to obviously, I suppose, be accountable and answer some of those questions around waiting lists and how they will deal with that. But for us, I think our focus or area should be around the preventative level and what we've got and what we can do within the community. Hence the kind of Powerful Parents Project and working with parents who perhaps are in that waiting list and quite distressed to have those children in that situation. But many GPs, social prescribers have said that to us, and they're at the front end of it. They're seeing it on a daily basis. So definitely get that. And sometimes I think it's about holding your nerve and doing that preventative work, knowing that the ongoing crisis is happening, but actually we are adding value here, and it's significant value, and we have to champion that as well.
Councillor Anne Eves.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Turner. This is about dementia. It's mentioned on page 36 that there's a dementia group and it's a priority. And I'm a bit concerned about postcode difference between the price of daycare. In Burgess Hill, it's £58 if you go to dementia daycare, and yet if you go to Haywards Heath, it's £29 because it's subsidised. Now, this may be something I should take up with West Sussex, and I have sent them a question on it, but it's such a disparity, and obviously no one, I'm assuming no one's going to Burgess Hill, they have to drive to Haywards Heath. So, don't know if you can comment.
Your signpost. So obviously with the partners that we would work, I would say try carer support, because they have excellent knowledge on that. And again, if you're going to county council, you know, like the adults care point as well, you could talk to there. But yeah, it is, you know, ongoing care is an issue, dementia support is an issue. We have the alliances that we've tried to support with projects before in the past with some of the partnership work that we've done. But yeah, carer support would be my first port of call, yeah.
Thank you. See no more indications. Oh, Councillor Heidi Branson, please.
Chairman, I just wanted to add, is it not the case that in terms of funding, there's limited funding coming out of West Sussex, and as a result, the reason why Haywards Heath is identified is because it's equidistant within the area, so that there is a greater spread of that dementia care support. That's my understanding, why it's not necessarily as subsidised, for example, in Burgess Hill.
I work in adult social care, so I'm not sure how they would, you know, formulate that decision or make it. Yeah, so again, I would probably revert to either county council for that, or, you know, carer support, if you want a conversation on the impact and how that looks, yeah.
Thank you. No more indications on that section, so moving to 37, item 37, Community Resilience Group. Paul, would you like to introduce that?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so finally the Community Resilience Group. This is a new group that's been formed really from the kind of recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. This is chaired by Mid-Sussex Voluntary Action as a group. And so really this is kind of the first year's work of the group. And a lot of that was, I suppose, looking at the impact of the pandemic and kind of building community leadership through activities such as community champions that ran so successfully during the pandemic in terms of engaging with BAME communities and helping with health messages to those groups. In there you'll see there's some projects around digital support champions where Mid-Sussex Voluntary Action runs some training for 15 volunteers for digital champions, because we moved into a digital world when we moved into the pandemic, and so some people were digitally excluded, and so we kind of trained with volunteers, or Voluntary Action did, to help go and provide training and assistance to those that needed it online. We're currently out to tender for work on a NEETS, so that's young people not in education, employment or training, to provide for the district council, for the district, over the next 3-4 years. And then again, some of the group's priorities for the coming year is sustainable food partnerships and food banks, support for community transport, addressing digital exclusion, and supporting digital champions, encouraging volunteering in the context of numbers no longer available following the pandemic. And we've seen a massive drop in volunteers across the board in our voluntary sector. And there's also a question about what we do to support our current volunteers that have been through quite a tough time over the last few years, and indeed, you know, with the cost of living, are like to experience some more kind of distressing clientele when they're working with them. So those are kind of some of the focuses for the community group. As I said, it's early days, it's the first year's work, but delighted that it's Voluntary Action are chairing that group and helping lead that conversation as the lead for community infrastructure development.
Councillor Janice Henwood, please.
Thank you. I'm interested in your talking about community hubs. I sort of now understand why in Burgess Hill the cherry tree has been suggested. If MSVA are chairing this group, they probably have vested interest in it forming. Can I please promote another hub in Burgess Hill, which is in the Martlets, which is adjacent to Mid-Sussex District Council's plan for an urban garden, and it's called the Kiln, and it's a very thriving hub right adjacent to where the proposals are. So would you please promote that as a community hub?
Yeah, and it's the responsibility we commission as a district council, Mid Sussex Voluntary Action, to promote other community hubs, other community groups and charities. That's part of the work they do. So if they're not working with them, they should be. Yeah.
Our role is to follow this up. I'm expecting your partnership to follow it up.
I'll be happy to follow that up. So if you want to put a request to me, I can make that link if it's not already been made. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, if you could email in Councillor Henwood, thank you very much. Councillor Whittaker.
Thank you, Chairman. On similar vein to Councillor Henwood, Community Hub in East Grinstead, the Stone Quarry crew, very pleased under paragraph 40, page 14, a good mention for that. And I know that the council have been very supportive of that move to the post office. The leader and the deputy leader and even the chairman of the council have been involved. Can I ask, therefore, will there be any funding, is there any funding for that particular project and other community hubs, as Councillor Henwood said, from the district council or other sources? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, in the first instance, we're having the conversations within these partnerships with those providers, and we're recognising the great work that they've done during the pandemic, some of these community groups, and having a place for people to go to talk about food issues, financial issues, or indeed just general support in terms of adult social care. So I think having recognised and identified those hubs is a step forward as where we are. In terms of funding, the fact that we come together regularly is something that I would like to look within partnerships that we can jointly go for together. I know we only get small pots of funding here, but there are opportunities that come up for funding from government or other sources where if we're together having those conversations, that then together we can look at doing those sorts of things. In the UK Prosperity Fund bid that was submitted on the 31st of August, there is some allocation to that for the Stone Quarry, Cherry Tree, and I think it was Bentwood, yes, Bentwood as well as part of that bid. So quite a significant amount of money of that bid was gone to that. So funding is in tow, and conversations are being had about future arrangements as well. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Phillips, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, on page 41, you mentioned it's mentioned the number of year 12 and 13 year 12 and 13 students that disappear from the records of the county. I wondered how much effort is actually made to trace these, whether it's fairly cursory or whether there is any long-term effort made.
Yeah, this is work that's led by the county council. So I'd have to kind of go to them to see what they do. I mean, the great thing is under the Community Resilience Group that we are commissioning our own NEATS project for Mid Sussex as an area. So on top of the work that will be available from the county, we'll have our own specific project as well. So those that are falling through the group, through the gaps, if you will, or go missing, hopefully that will happen less with the additional support that we're providing, because it's something we've identified as a partnership. But I can find out in terms of what they do and what measures they take place. But the positive news story is that there's something we're providing an additional service under NEATS for Mid Sussex as an area going forward for the next 3 to 4 years. That works out to tender now.
Councillor Belsey, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I was only just going to pick up on the Councillor Whittaker point on the community, the Stone Quarry Cafe, if I may. Just obviously, whilst looking at the funding aspect, which we've also been supported by Clarion Futures there to help with the refurbishment. We are the landlords, and I think recognising that the lessee is CIC, we have also sought to be as reasonable as possible as the landlord in terms of rent obligations and things like that. So it's not just funding, it's also trying to make the lease as accessible as possible to give the CIC every opportunity to flourish in their new home. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Belsey. I see no further indications on that topic. Now, UK Shared Prosperity Fund, please. Paul.
Yes, as previously mentioned, an additional function of the MSP 2022-23 is to provide governance for the new UK Shared Prosperity Fund, which succeeds the old European structural funds. This is a local delivery of government levelling up agenda, and so council officers have put together a plan for funding proposals, and in that plan we have 3 community hubs It's just under £250,000 over 3 years that we want to invest via that plan. And then there's some investment for our parks as well, which has been such a focal point for people during the pandemic. And again, something that I'll draw back to in terms of well-being and mental health is something as an asset that I think we really want to protect and build on, because I think that's really helped in terms of prevention around mental health, physical health, some real positives there. These plans were drawn up with in view of the Sustainable Economic Strategy that was developed as well, and then were tabled in front of the Mid-Sussex Partnership Board for endorsement, and then they were submitted to local government on the 31st of August. They've only been submitted recently. I think we're due to hear back in October. So at the moment, we're waiting to hear if we've been successful or not on that bid, but that's just something that the MSP board will review and receive reports on progress on as and when we receive notification from the government on funding.
Thank you very much. Any indications? I don't see any. Okay. As Paul said at the start, the Appendix A is the data that supports those reports, so I don't intend to go through that particular report item by item because we've covered that, so thank you very much. I'm going to move now to the recommendation on page 9. The Scrutiny Committee is recommended to note the work of the Mid-Sussex Partnership in 2021-22. Are we working? Good, good. Working? Excellent. Okay, that is unanimously agreed. Thank you. Noted, rather. Moving on to item 7 on page 43, performance monitoring for the first quarter of 2022-2023. It's actually going to be introduced by Marius Kynastan. We're going to do it as we normally do when we go by section, but we'll start with you, Marius, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm just going to introduce myself very briefly at the beginning. And my surname's Kynastan, by the way, Chairman.
I beg your pardon.
I should have pointed that out before the meeting. It's not an easy name. My job title is also a bit odd, perhaps if you haven't come across it before. PMO stands for Programme Management Office. The Programme Management Office is one of our responsibilities is the performance monitoring of the council, and we produce the reports for this committee. And Neil, who you're more familiar with, is part of the team, and he continues to be the officer who works on the detail of the report. So he'll help me answer some of the questions when you raise them during this item. Yes, the report is for the first quarter of 22-23, so it covers the period April to June. It's in the usual format. I think you're familiar with that, so I won't dwell on it too much, but as usual, it uses the traffic light system to highlight particular areas of performance. The PIs that we've used have been updated to include some of those agreed at the last meeting. So we've got new PIs around fly tipping, electric vehicle charging points, and reporting of the numbers on the housing register. So the overall performance, as it says in the report, is generally positive. So 70% of the indicators are at green, which means they are on or above target. And you'll have seen within the report some explanations where that targets are not met. And again, we can talk about those as we go through the report. Just a couple of areas that I wanted to highlight and which are highlighted in the report. First of all, around the housing options team, they've had quite a bit of success in improving processes and streamlining decision making. And that's really enabled some more rapid movement through temporary accommodation and into long-term settled accommodation. So that means, in terms of PIs, that means a positive impact on numbers in temporary accommodation and the use of nightly paid accommodation. So that particular PI, obviously beneficial for the people and their living conditions. And the other area I just wanted to highlight was around revenues and benefits. So there's one or two issues around performance in that area. They've experienced really significant workloads over a long period, and then most recently in processing 36,000 energy rebates. So a very significant level of work, which has had some impact on PI performance. And just to note that additional resources have been allocated to assist with this and the associated telephone inquiries. And so we expect to see some improvement over time. Those are the only two areas to focus on, Chairman, so really open to questions on the rest of the report.
Okay, well, we'll do it by section, so any questions on building control? Start on page 45, I see none. Community services, I see no indications. Environmental health. Excuse me. Land charges. Legal and member services. Finance. Nope. Landscapes. Doing well. Estate services. Waste. Councillor Janice Edward.
Thank you. A couple of questions. How are we going to assess our pilot scheme of food waste? Will there be any further up on that? I'm also interested in the electrical connection. Is that included in the household sent for reuse, recycling and composting? Is that part of our electrical collection? I also think on the other, talking about household waste sent for reuse, recycling and composting, I think that's quite a low target. And the comment about domestic waste volumes continue to rise as people enjoy. I mean, waste volumes, are these the ones that can be recycled, or is that to do with landfill or what? I need further explanation, please, on those.
Okay, yeah,
Three things. Thank you.
did you get that, Barry?
Thank
Did you
you.
get those points?
I mean, I think we'll have to come back to you on some of the detail within that, but I mean, in general, just try and work backwards. The volumes of waste did rise during the pandemic, as I'm sure you know, because of the number of people who were at home rather than at work, and that continues to be the case. Your specific question about whether that's all waste or just landfill waste, I think I'll need to go and check, unless you know more on that, Neil. We're not sure. I think you raised a question about...
Electrical connection, I didn't quite...
Yes, sorry. Electrical waste collection is part of the recycling figure.
Thank you. And the food waste?
And yes, sorry, the food waste pilot project started on the 12th of this month. So we would expect to produce some reports as that progresses and update you on the monitoring around that. I'll go back to the project manager responsible and just check when we're likely to do that.
I don't know, I can't remember when the next meeting is. Would it be available in the next couple of months, 2 or 3 months, do you think?
Given that it's only just started, I think you need a volume of data to
I
provide an effective response. So whether it'll be the next meeting,
Okay,
which is only...
just to get an idea.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll check and come back to you.
Thank you. Councillor Phillips.
Thank you, Chair. The green waste composting, it's nice to see a small increase in numbers, but I gather there has been a problem with people giving dates for their green waste, new people for the green waste collections to start, and this has been slipping several months. Although these figures in themselves look fine, is there a problem? And are there any? Do we know if there are any plans to increase the capacity in the near future, please?
Again, I don't think we have the detail of that, so I'll need to follow up and see what more I can provide to you on that. I know we've done quite a lot of work in terms of making it easier to apply for green waste collection, but I don't know the detail of whether that's not being fulfilled, but I'll come back to you on that.
Councillor Belsey, you have anything else?
I take on board the point Councillor Phillips is making. I think we're very close to the capacity of the green waste system, and it was, rather than introduce a waiting list, people have been given time a few months hence from which they will be able to join, which is based on number of people moving, etc. So that as they leave the service, the new people can enter the service, and I think it's been a bit slower than anticipated in that respect. And I think the idea had been waiting to hear what government guidance is going to be, because I think there was going to be some impending sort of legislation, etc., in terms of what councils are expected to do with garden waste, including potentially, for example, offering it as a free service. So we were waiting to hear from government in that respect and been trying to hold on. But I know it's always under review and will be under further review again as the demand for the service continues to increase. I was also just going to comment on Councillor Henwood's point about the 46%. Part of the reason of the food waste trial is to try to increase our recycling rates. Over 20% by volume is food, and there is only so much we can do without introducing food waste in terms of getting the recycling rates up, which is why we've got to continue to come up with new initiatives such as this to seek to improve it, but we're never going to be able to take it much higher than than the current 46% target unless we actually take those initiatives.
Councillor Heidi Brunson, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Can you please excuse the fact that I don't know the answer to this question, but the page 58, the electric vehicle charging points that we have around the district.
I think you've jumped
Have
a
I?
category, so we just hold that until we get
I
to
will
that category.
hold that
Otherwise,
thought.
I'll get all out of sequence here, but thank you, we'll come back to you on that. I see no more indications on waste. Thank you. Moving on, economic development, sustainability, customer services and communications. Councillor Anneves.
Sorry, Chair, it was on sustainability. I wonder if we should have a KPI here for not just the number of electric vehicles and ICE vehicles, but maybe even the number of miles done in electric vehicles and in ICE vehicles, because I know the council is moving from combustion engines to EVs, and it would be good to monitor how that's going.
You mean in relation to our own vehicles?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I think we can follow up on that and see what we can find out about that.
Thank you. Councillor Whittaker.
Thank you, Chairman. Just on page 52, just to say very well done again. The compliments received, 83, I always like to flag that, way in excess of complaints. So well done to everyone.
Noted. Thank you, Councillor Whittaker. HR and organisational development. No indications. Revenues and benefits on page 55. No indications. Leisure operations. Okay, and then parking services and electrical vehicle. Oh, beg your pardon if I missed someone. Councillor Whittaker.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, just on leisure, good to see the numbers rising in the report as expected, which is really good news. Just like to flag an issue that's certainly arisen, which could affect numbers potentially, in terms of the swimming pool and the swimming club at East Grinstead, and probably affects the Triangle and the Dolphin as well. There's an issue with Places Leisure about the depth of the pool and diving with Swim England. And it's causing some consternation. Councillor Belsey is involved and aware, and I think he's making Councillor Demir aware of it as well. But if that's not resolved satisfactorily soon, then certainly the swimming club could well be vacating the King's Leisure Centre, which they've been going for 100 years.
What is the issue with diving?
It's to do with depth. It's an administration thing that Places Leisure need to sort out. But Councillor Belsey is aware.
Councillor Belsey, will you welcome?
I actually spoke with Bob Shelley from East Grinstead Sports Council on the subject again tonight. Councillor Dim is well aware, our officers are well aware, and working with Places Leisure, it is a finely balanced issue in that global FINA have recommended a minimum swimming depth, which for diving, which is higher than, which is deeper than the East Grinstead pool, unfortunately. Swim England's Swim England guidelines for the pool depth require allow shallower diving than FINA, and Swim England are reconsulting on whether they need to move to the FINA guidance or vice versa, or whether to allow it. But unfortunately, under I think existing insurance, the Places Leisure, they've not been able to sanction diving from the ends because it contravenes the FINA guidelines. But we are looking at, with Councillor Demir and Places Leisure, whether we can have, for example, diving on the side so you can at least continue to practice rather than sort of having races. So there's a number of things that we are looking at, and we recognise completely that the swimming club in East Grinstead has been a very big supporter and important to the King's Centre, and we will seek to work with Places Leisure and the swim club to see what other solutions we might be able to come up with. But it's a very difficult area, as you can't just magic a swimming pool deeper.
Understood, thank you. Councillor Janice Henwood, is yours related to leisure or is it related to parking and electrical?
It's actually related to leisure.
Leisure, okay.
Okay, so it also to do with the swimming. What do you anticipate the impact upon attendance with the increase in energy costs, particularly with increasing heating swimming pools? So what have you taken any steps, anticipation because of attendance? Thank you.
I'm not going to pretend to be able to give you a full answer on this, but I know there's been quite a bit of promotion and events to promote the use of the leisure centres and the swimming pools in particular. And we were talking about it just before the meeting. I'll follow up some more around energy costs and the impact that that's having around the contract and how that works, and whether that's going to have an impact on the service provided.
Good question. Councillor, it's no more on leisure. Oh, it's a leisure question.
It's a leisure one. Yeah, you'll be pleased to know. Love the accent. It's around the number of visits made to the leisure centres, and it's really about understanding how we can improve that footfall. And one of the things that I would be interested in understanding is how often we talk to our leisure providers about the pricing structure within things like swimming, for example. I'll give you an example in East Grinstead. If you wanted to be a couple and go swimming together as a couple, you can't buy a joint membership to go swimming. But you can go to Edenbridge or any of the neighbouring authorities and buy a joint husband and wife membership, which then brings the price point down and then encourages people to come as a couple rather than as individuals. And I just wondered what level of sort of global pricing we look at to understand where we're pitching it at.
Okay, Councillor Belsey, did you gather the question there?
It's not my.
I just thought you might be the first port of call, but my apologies if it's not you.
I had put my hand up, but it's something that we raise regularly with Places Leisure in terms of what types of memberships and things we can offer our customers. They are in charge of the pricing structure and what they think works best, and we have raised a few other ones about sort of family members with numbers of children and ages and things, and I'd be happy to pass on to Councillor Demir if we could put that at the raise that as a type of issue for consideration for their next meeting. I'm sure it has been covered before and there will be an explanation, but happy to raise it again.
Thank you. I think it's just a matter of understanding that we are meant to be competitive in the market, and we will lose footfall, and therefore our leisure centres will become less viable to our taxpayers if we don't manage them in that way and understand the global market that we are actually, the national market that we're in.
Councillor Ash Edwards, please.
And just as an additional comment, hopefully as a reassurance, is to remind members that, of course, the council's contract with Places Leisure does incentivise PL to do exactly what Councillor Branston is suggesting in terms of participation, revenue, visits, so that's really important in terms of them having that responsibility and indeed bringing their market expertise to that. But as Councillor Belty says, we'll make sure that's fed back in through the portfolio.
Thank you. Councillor Hicks.
Thank you, Chairman. It was really following up on those points, particularly relating to the leisure centres and the pricing structure relating to young disabled people, which are now charged full price, I believe, where previously, prior to April, they were able to get a discount. I just wondered if we could have, as part of that report, a review of the pricing structure and whether any progress. I believe some discussions were ongoing with Places Leisure, but it seems a pity that we should be discouraging young disabled people from using the centres, particularly when they have particular health issues that would mean that encourage them to use those places. Also, on the leisure centres and the usage, I'd just highlight the finance report to the Cabinet assumes the full income from the leisure centres in terms of next year's budget, 1.4 million. I'm not sure that's very realistic, even on the slight improvement shown tonight. I just wonder whether we're able to give more realistic figures in terms of how much income we might obtain from the leisure centres in the next financial year.
Paul, do you want to take the disabled access one first, please?
I thought I'd like to add, in terms of how we're serving to the community via the leisure centres, I've been involved with the leisure centres for a long time in the role, and I wanted to mention the exercise referral programme that they run, which health professionals can refer into, and in that you get a discounted 3-month membership, which is around £70 or £80. But recently we've accessed some funding to pay for places of those that have been disproportionately affected by the pandemic or indeed in financial hardship. So the leisure centres have been working on providing access to those who are most vulnerable in our communities to use those services, and are actively doing that as well. So it's just to mention that there are some activities and partnership work going on that can help people into those, and they've been getting regular referrals from social prescribers in practices that are then coming across some of these cases, people in financial hardship or indeed have been disproportionately affected by pandemic or health reasons, and been able to fund those 3-month places completely using that funding we got from government. So just to add to that there is some work going on there.
Councillor Ashford, do you want to respond to the budgetary question that Councillor Hicks raised?
Thanks, Chairman. I think simply on that, members will know the very significant amount of financial support the council has needed to provide to the leisure centres during the pandemic, and the goal is simply to get back to the contractual position with PL, and that's what the budget forecasts reflect.
Thank you very much. No, I see no one is going to say. So parking services and electrical vehicle charging on page 57. Councillor Phillips.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I mean, it's obviously interesting to see the number of kilowatt hours that the charge is being used for. But going forward, would it be possible to measure the number of cars that are actually using the service?
Neil says yes, so I'm a bit slightly reluctant to promise that because it feels quite hard to do, but I think we can have a look into it and see what we can do.
Thank you. We'll look at that, see if we get a report next time. Councillor Anne Eves.
Thank you, Chair. Delighted to see all these charging points going in everywhere.
I thought you might be, yes.
Lovely, neat station road, beautiful. I'm a bit miffed that Hurstpier Point has 8 and we only have 6 in Burgess Hill, but I'm sure this is going to change any minute now. And my real question is, what about the rapid at the Triangle? We were going to get a rapid under the previous regime, and it seems to have gone by the board. Thank you.
I'm sorry, we don't know the answer to that. I'll follow up and see what I can find out about that.
Councillor Alison Bennett?
Sorry.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
I think with the power, I don't think people, they suck up so much power. I don't think it was, I think when the consultants came to the triangle, I think they advised that it couldn't take a rapid charger.
Okay.
So it's not
That's
happening.
right.
There we go. So to Councillor Eve's point about Hurst Pierpoint and its 8 charging points, you might be surprised to discover that Hurst Pierpoint Parish Council aren't very happy that 8 electric vehicle charging points have gone in, because parking is quite tight, and effectively, unless you get, you've got 8 spaces that were being used by combustion engine cars being pushed out, maybe onto the roads and things. So in terms of vehicle occupancy levels, I think there's sort of 2 sides to that about why it's quite a good thing to look at, to see how much EV charging is being done there, and also how much those spaces are being used by non-electric cars, and seeing how that changes over time. So yes, it's a bit of a moot point in Hurst Pierpoint, actually. And Chairman, the reason I put my hand up originally was, have we skipped over the housing options section, which was about 5 pages back, I think?
I shall check.
I've gone fold forward now.
I might have missed a page, so my apologies if I did. What page is it on? Just
52.
51.
52, 53.
Customer services and communications, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did actually. I missed it. Mate, you're well spotted.
That's all right. Can I ask a question?
Yeah, of course you may.
Thank you. Yes, I found the last of those measures, number of applicants on the housing register, really interesting, actually, and thank you for including it. I was aware that we had roughly 2,000 households on the register, but the breakdown in the right-hand column is really informative. I hadn't realised that 1,300 of those were people who, to quote, have no housing need but interested in affordable housing. I would be in, and this scrutiny group is now responsible for housing, isn't it? So this is something we could maybe look at. I'm interested in how those 4 bands are changing over time, and if there's a particular pinch point in any of them. And probably offline, I could do with somebody explaining to me sort of how you present yourself for affordable housing and what criteria you need to meet in order to go on the register. You know, can anybody rock up and say they want affordable housing? I assume not. So how does that work?
Have we got time to explain that last point, or is that something we need to take offline? It sounds like it might be a complex point.
I need to take that away, but I mean, I think the issue about trend data is something that we could have a look at over time, which would be quite interesting.
Thank you. Councillor Phillips, is your point related to the one to housing?
Well, the housing,
Yes,
Chairman.
yes, sure.
Right, thank you, Chairman. 3 points, actually, if I may.
Let's take one at a time, shall we? Thank you.
First of all, are the people living in temporary accommodation and nightly paid accommodation exclusive, or is the 26 included in the 85? You said that we're getting people out of temporary accommodation more quickly because of more efficient systems, but the average number of days seems to have gone up to 272 days, which seems to contradict that. And probably a question that you could come back on, what's the longest time that anyone is currently in accommodation for, please?
Sorry, did you get that one?
Yes, the number of households in nightly paid accommodation is a subset of the number of households in temporary accommodation. The average amount of time, I suspect, is related to how recent the changes have been made within housing options. But again, I'll speak to colleagues and see what more we can find out about that. And generally the kind of trend around change within that area.
Okay, thank you. All right. Going back, any more indicated? We're now back on parking services and electrical vehicle charging, yeah?
No, I follow this up on housing.
Oh, okay, right,
Chairman, just
okay.
a quick question. I'm quite curious about point of origin, because we realise that quite a few people, perhaps after living here under a government scheme for a few months, might become homeless. So I'm just curious about point of origin of the folks that are now needing accommodation.
Again, I don't know the detail of that answer. Are you indicating towards Ukrainian refugees and the situation for them? And I'll try and find out more, because we're obviously aware that there's a fixed timeline around that support. So we'll see if I can find out some more and report back on that.
Councillor Ash-Edwards?
Of detail to that. So for refugees arriving under the sponsorship programmes that the government has established, if a placement ends or if it collapses before the point at which it's due to end, the council will have a homelessness duty to those people. And the emerging evidence nationally is that the rates of placements falling through is higher than we would like. And so that is going to, as those 6-month placements begin to come to an end, that is going to put pressure on those figures, I'm afraid.
Okay, coming back then to parking services and electrical vehicle charging, back on 57, do I see any more indications? 57, 58, yep, that's fine, same category, yep. Councillor Hardy-Brunson.
Yes, I understand that the electrical charging points are 35p per kilowatt hour. Correct. Okay. How relevant is this in terms of budgets within a rising energy price market for us to continue to charge at that rate?
Are we charging enough, I think the question
In other words?
I don't have the detail to answer that question, so I need to go away and just find out about that.
Okay, because I would like to understand how much of a subsidy the taxpayer is paying for energy at electrical charging points, which whilst laudable, are, some people are going to have to make some very difficult decisions this coming winter.
Is it subsidised?
Well, it must be, if it's only 30.
Okay, we need to just check rather than make some assumptions. Councillor Ash-Edwards? Yeah.
Of course, members will recall that this programme is being delivered as part of a county-wide contract that's one of the largest public sector rollouts in the country. And so I think I'm right in saying that the business model for that is that the contractor effectively takes the commercial risk on that in return for installing the charging points. So I think I'm right in saying that West Sussex County Council are taking the lead on it with all the districts and boroughs, but I think it's designed to be a commercial contract without public subsidy. I think I'm right in saying.
But we'll just get that confirmed back for you, okay? Okay. Okay, no more on electrical charging. Moving on to page 59, development management. Councillor Whittaker.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to flag an issue certainly that I've been made aware of in East Grinstead, to do with processing of minor planning applications within 8 weeks and other. So it's basically sort of small applications, one house or under sort of seven units, mainly residential. A number of people have come to me asking advice really on what they should do, how they should react in certain situations when officers haven't updated the portal or corresponded or replied to some correspondence. And there have probably been half a dozen incidents, and in a couple of instances they felt really aggrieved, and I've sort of talked them out of taking it sort of further, hoping that the issue would resolve itself. And some of those are ongoing. So I'm just curious as to how the balance of the 10% of the 70 of minor applications within 8 weeks and the 5% of the 343 are tracked, if they are tracked, i.e. the balance of the ones that aren't processed within 8 weeks. So and I'm hoping it's just an isolated period of time within East Grinstead and that is not applicable elsewhere, but
I'm obviously slightly puzzled because performance is at 99%, so it's hard to improve on that, but I think your question is more about the procedure and the process which sits behind that. Yeah, I mean, I'll
small planning application.
Yeah.
There are a lot of them.
Yeah, I'll go back to colleagues and just have a chat about that, and maybe we can discuss it further at the next meeting. I'll just see if it's an issue that they're aware of.
Okay, thank you. And last one, housing enabling. I see no indication, so moving to the recommendations on page 3. Okay, the committee is recommended to note the council's performance in the first quarter of the year and identify any areas where further reporting or information is required. Gentlemen, please, thank you. Advise the Cabinet of any issues that the committee considers should be given particular consideration at the Cabinet meeting on the 17th of October 2022. So, please vote now. Okay, that is unanimously approved. Thank you very much. If, when you're responding to the various questions, etc., if we could copy in the whole committee would help, and saves people coming back again if they haven't heard and such like that, or if they weren't here. So I'd appreciate that. Thank you very much. Okay, the work programme on page 61. Tom.
Thank you, Chairman. You've got your usual items, but in addition, at the March meeting, you've got 2 new areas. The Complaints and Compliments Report and the Equality and Diversity Progress Report. That takes on board the new responsibilities of this committee.
Thank you, Tom. Recommendation on page 61. The committee is recommended to agree the indicative work programme as set out at paragraph 5 of this report. That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Item 9, questions pursuant to Council Procedure Rule 10.2. Due to notice has been given. There is none. Therefore, I close the meeting at 12 minutes past 8. Please remain seated till the live stream turns down. Thank you very much, members.
The live stream is ending, Chairman.